Hey guys, I'm going to pop in about a minute early here. Happy Thursday afternoon. Appreciate all you guys jumping in and joining us. We're going to go as long as we need to go today to get some questions answered. I've got a ton of guys popped in already. Larry, Ashley, Carrie, Ron, channel members. Thanks again, guys, for your support. We've got a lot of guys. Warren's in from Vero Beach. This is new to me. Warren, welcome. So typically what we're going to do with this stuff, guys, of course, I've got the chat running over here. I've got a couple of things, if you don't mind. Can somebody give me a thumbs up and a comment here? Make sure that the audio and video is coming through good. The stream looks good from my end. If you guys could confirm that for me, that would be great. So Warren, welcome. Glad to have you with us, man. We're going to have a good time and answer some questions. And Ron Coburn's with us. Charles, Ben, Martin, excellent. Tom, thank you guys. Appreciate the thumbs up. If you fellas don't mind, I've got a couple of exciting announcements. I want to give you an idea of, I think, a new video that that's in the works right now that is an extremely hot topic. Cams and cam plates, man, are the thing right now. And, you know, we covered a lot of stuff with twin cam, and I've said that we're going to work our way into the M8 stuff. The reason I've done it that way is because so many people are pulling twin cams out of the weeds and, you know, just kind of reviving the bikes and stuff. So I wanted to give you twin cam guys something to definitely look at. Of course, we're going to go back and look at shovelheads and Evos and all that stuff at some point too. But anyway, so we're easing our way into M8, and we're doing this progressively, talking about the most common problems, and we're working our way to cam chest. Next, we're going to be talking about heads, performance, and things like that. So one of our upcoming videos, what's up, Isaac? Thanks for joining. So one of our upcoming videos here, I think you guys are going to get a kick out of this one. So here's 3 dyno sheets. These 3 dyno sheets in the upper left-hand corner is directly off of SNS's website for their 465 cam for the M8. The one next to that is the fueling for their 465 cam. And the one below that is the 468 cam from Zippers. Now, you know, again, I don't brand bash anybody. My job is to bring you guys the facts. So the approach I'm taking with this video is I want to tie in the cams by the numbers. You know, I did a video not too long ago on you know, what cam numbers really mean and how to choose the perfect cam. So what I'm going to do is take the numbers published by each of these manufacturers and explain what those numbers mean, and then show you guys on these dyno sheets how those numbers affect the power curve, the torque curve of those particular cams. Now, I'm doing this in a very specific way that I think is really, really important. So I'm using the dyno sheets provided by the manufacturer directly off of their website. I am not tuning and installing these myself because I want this to truly be an unbiased analysis of what the manufacturers are saying that their cams are capable of. Okay, so so that's one part. So it's unbiased. The second, we have to assume that the dyno sheet that they are going to put on their website is more than likely the best results that they were able to achieve. So I'm hoping if you guys can shoot me a comment, I'm pretty sure you'll agree that this is probably the most fair way to assess the performance of that cam. Now, again, I'm not telling you that. Great topic. Thank you, Krieger. I'm not going to tell you which one of these cams is the better cam. The idea is to explain how the specs on the cam generate that type of dyno sheet and the difference in between them, so that when it comes time for you to choose a cam, you'll understand the numbers and be able to pick the cam that's best for you. Now, remember, as I've always said, a dyno sheet is not a fair and accurate representation of how the bike is going to perform across the entire power range or operating range. But at least this will give you more information than you probably can find anywhere else to help you make your own educated decision. So that we have that coming up. All right, now the let's see what else we got going here. Y'all have to bear with me. I got a bunch of screens going here at one time. Okay, the next thing, of course, with everything that's going on, I've got so many people wanting to get T-shirts from us, and we've had quite a delay on getting those T-shirts made. You know, where we get them made, I want to explain that because that's an important aspect of this. First off, I want to show you the T-shirt and see what you guys think about it. Let me see if I can pull this up here real quick. So that's the new T-shirt design. Of course, it's got our Skunkworks logo for the custom engines, and then the Baxter's Garage logo on the back. So I hope you guys get a kick out of that, and you like that. Now, one of the reasons why it is taking us so long to get this shirt. Here, wait just a second. All right, where I order my T-shirts from, it's a company called GoX. Now, GoX is a company that they're a charity, essentially, right? So a portion of their profits goes to help orphans all over the world. So I love getting my T-shirts from them and knowing, you know, if I've got to buy something from somewhere, to know that I'm helping somebody at the same time. So they've been shut down because of everything that's going on, and we're going to get the T-shirts in. So the T-shirts are available for sale on our website, and here's why that's important. I want to tell you guys a little factoid about myself that a lot of you may not know. You've noticed this cup in several of my videos, and I've gotten a ton of emails from people asking me what that is and what 3T Sports is. All right, so the T-shirts on the website are $24.95. Yeah, that's a little pricey for a T-shirt, but here's what I'm doing. A lot of people don't know that I also run a nonprofit organization. I started a nonprofit a few years ago as a result of a major foot injury. I found myself laying on my couch, pretty much bedridden for many months, having to depend on people, and it just kind of hit me that there's a lot of kids out there that have disabilities that need help. They need mobility devices for their therapy and things like that. And these mobility devices are extremely expensive. So what I do, and I'll show you guys, I don't know if I'm boring you to death. I hope you guys are enjoying something like this. At least we can get to know each other a little bit. So this organization, let me show you a couple of pictures here. So here, just some photographs. So what I do is I raise money to help kids in need. So, in this particular, let me scroll down here and I can show you. So in this particular here, this family, we helped them renovate their house to make everything handicap accessible. And then we go down, this little guy right here was awesome. So one of the things we really like to do is we make these adaptive bicycles. So imagine a kid that's never moved under his own power. He could have spina bifida, muscular dystrophy, something like that. And these little adaptive bicycles give these guys and girls the ability to power themselves and get some exercise, and it's very therapeutic. This little girl, she was an absolute sweetheart. So another thing that I do is I'll get to exactly what I do, the extreme of it. So I'll run marathons, and as part of these marathons, we'll have disabled kids and adults in wheelchairs. So we push them throughout the event, and they get to experience the joy of finishing a marathon and getting a medal. I think that's pretty cool. So here's another little guy, and so anyway, I've got another program with this stuff, and I focus on with that program. I come to find it's called Operation Freedom Forward. And what I found out was when you have active duty military, if they have special needs children, then they have access to, the doctors and the therapy equipment and all that type of stuff. But when they discharge from the military, they lose access to a lot of that stuff. So here we have a lot of, retired and discharged vets that have special needs kids who can't afford this equipment. So we look for those that have been honorably discharged and that have those children, and we supply stuff like that. So the reason that I tell you all of that, so I do, do those marathons, but I also do Ironman races. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ironman races, but let me pull up and I'll show you a couple other pictures of that. Let's see, here they are. Okay, so basically it's a swim, bike, run thing. So you swim 2.5 miles, and then you bike 115 miles, and then and then you run a full marathon at 26.2 miles. So that's pushing another young lady there, which was that Sherry was her name. That was pretty cool. So I do these races in order to raise money to help these kids, right? Well, the problem this year has been all the races have been canceled. And so I haven't been able to really raise that much money to try to help these kids. So I've come up with an idea. The T-shirts. The T-shirts are $24.95 on the website, okay? So what I'm doing is all of the profits from the T-shirts that you guys purchase, I'm going to donate right back into 3T Sports and use it to help those kids. So that's my plan for that. So yeah, it's a little pricey for a T-shirt, but they are really nice T-shirts. The company that's doing it's a charity. It's going to be like a tri-blend, so it's that softer material. So it's a really nice shirt. But yeah, all the profits from that are going to back into 3T Sports to help kids. So hope you guys get a kick out of that. Anyway, let's see what else have we got. All right, so we talked about the video, talked about that with the other. Okay, so let's hop over to the chat here and see what all we've got going on. I know. Let's see. Yeah, so I think that cam thing, I hope that help you guys out a lot. So Blake's in from Poland. Thanks for joining us, Blake. Do I do dyno tuning at my shop, Gasmer? Yes, we do tuning at our shop for sure. And can I show one if I do? If you're referring to those cams, yeah, we can do that. Let's see what kind of questions we got here. Cam from Krieger. Cam selection is confusing. I want to be educated to make the correct and best choice. Yes. So we're going to do that. Let's see, Mike. Same thing. HPI's external breather system. That's exactly correct. And he's referring to the vented dipstick for the M8s. So any auxiliary method of venting rocker boxes, or venting, assisting the crank breather system is great. I used to put PCV valves in rocker boxes and stuff like that to help. Ron, you like the shirt? Awesome. Long sleeve, you know what? I could do some long sleeves if you guys think if some people would want them. I can do them. We don't think about long sleeves around here, where I live. I mean, I think it's like 98 degrees today or something like that. But so I typically don't think long sleeves. So yeah, we could do some long sleeves. That'd be pretty good. Let's see. Order T-shirt when available. Love supporting my fellow vets. Thank you, sir. All right, so let's get to the first question here. Let me scroll up a minute. Bear with me, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, all right, Ron. Let's start with Ron. 142,000 Road King. My Road King original oil pump, voltage regulator, and stator with rotor. Should I replace them, even though they still give out good numbers after testing? That's a pretty good question. I mean, the thing you mentioned, original oil pump and cam plate. One of the problems with original oil pumps and cam plates is when you have a failure there, it can cause catastrophic damage. So, it's really a matter of your budget and how assured you want to be that, you've got a good operating machine there. So, something like an oil pump cam plate goes out, that can be a pretty expensive fix. As far as voltage regulator, stator, and rotor, if you check it, the amperage output is correct on the stator. It's not grounded to the case and everything's working as it should. I wouldn't necessarily be in a hurry to change it, but I will tell you, when you do change it, man, I wouldn't use anything else but Cycle Electric. I've used Cycle Electric stuff since I've been in the industry, and it's one of those parts that I've never had to replace because it was defective or needed to repair. So Cycle Electric makes great stuff. We've been selling their stuff for many, many years. So Ben Mack asks, can a higher compression motor be reliable for touring applications? 103 twin cam and looking to do engine work, always here to go low compression for reliability. That is an excellent question, Ben. Yes, higher compression engines can be very reliable, but it's all relative. So first thing you would want to look at is the altitude you live in. That would affect the acceptable compression ratio you could run. It's not all about compression ratio. It's also about the cam you choose and the intake close of that cam, which is what determines your final cylinder pressure. All right. So the other thing to think about is octane availability. So 93 octane, the absolute maximum that really you're going to benefit from is about a 10.5 to 1 compression ratio. All right, so one of the other things to think about is, you know, your battery, your charging system, and your starter, and how big the engine is going to be. And you know, but if you're strictly doing touring, here's a little trick. Okay, if you're strictly doing touring or you've got a heavier bike, you're not really going to gain anything from going from 10 to 1 to 10.5 to 1. All right, if you're chasing a minuscule dyno number, sure. But by running a 10 to 1 compression ratio, you can actually be a little more aggressive with the tuning. Okay, so you can advance the timing a little bit further. You can even run the fuel mixtures just a little bit leaner and pick up a lot of the power that you would have not gained by going 10.5. So if it's primarily a touring bike and you're carrying luggage and passenger all the time, 10 to 1, you're not giving up that much. Yes, 10.5 to 1 can be extremely reliable, but don't stress it if you don't have to. And then just get a really good tune on the bike, and then you'll have the power you're looking for there. So I hope that helps. You're welcome, David. David says thanks for sharing about the charity. Let's see, Australia. Excellent. I loved my visit to Australia. I've been there a couple of times. It's a great place. I spent most of my time in Brisbane and also in Sydney. And actually, if living in Australia, I'm sure you know Raleigh's. So they're a big distributor over there. And Raleigh's a great friend. He's a good guy. John and Berto that work on the bikes and run the place back there. They're awesome fellas. Of course, Adam Layton at APL Motorsports. He's a good friend. Doing business with him for a long time. And also a good friend, actually, at Morgan and Wacker, the Harley dealership there in Brisbane. And so a fellow by the name of Malcolm Martin is a salesman there. He actually used to live here in the States, and but he's from there, so he ended up going back home. But I love your country, man. It's a wonderful place. But the neatest things about it, you can walk through public parks and look around and see koalas getting high eating eucalyptus leaves. That's pretty funny. So free running NJ, would you upgrade the clutch or the engine first? You know, it's a lot of that. Depending on what you're doing with the engine, you almost have to do a clutch. So if you were trying to break it up for budgetary reasons, you shouldn't really build a performance engine without doing the clutch as well. So I would say if you needed to split that up, I would probably do the clutch first, and then that way you're prepared for when you install the engine, and it would be a good combo at that point. Just make sure that you buy a clutch that's of course going to be suitable for the engine that you plan on doing later, and also when you do that clutch, depending on the model of the bike and stuff, take serious consideration into doing a billet clutch basket, especially if your stock basket's really old. When they break, it causes very, very expensive damage. I live in New Mexico. Spent some time in New Mexico too. I've done a bunch of cross-country road trips and stuff. I love it out west. Let's see. When building a 124 motor, is it better to use stock HD case or S&S bottom case? You know, I've got to say it's. I've used S&S cases. They're good cases. Are they better than stock? Yes, they are better than stock. There's no question. Is it something you absolutely have to do? Man, and the other question, 124, I'm assuming we're talking a 124 twin cam. It's kind of an interesting thing. Once you get above, I'm going to wait for Martin to answer that. I'll go ahead and answer it. So one of the big challenges when you start getting the large bore stuff, is especially in twin cam, is the cylinder spigots start getting bigger and bigger. As they get bigger, you have to bore the case to accept that cylinder spigot. All right. As you bore the case, you're getting closer and closer to the cylinder stud, which is buried in aluminum. The other issue is the gasket sealing surface that's between the hole for the cylinder spigot and the stud. It gets very, very narrow. So me personally, and of course, if you're talking 124, I'm assuming we're talking a 4 5/8 stroke, which would be in a 4 1/8 bore, would give you a 124. The gasket starts getting very, very thin in that area. So at some point, it's not a matter of if you're going to have to replace base gaskets from a bit of a leak. It's just a matter of when. How long? Who's to say? So a lot of that would be depending on which S&S case we're talking about, which combination of cylinders, the spigot diameter, stuff like that. Me personally, I like to actually stop at a 124, but when I build one of those for somebody, I'll tell them, just be aware that that spigot has to be a little bit bigger, and at some point, it could be 20, 30,000 miles or more down the road, you'll probably have to pull the cylinders and replace a little bit of a weep in the base gasket. It's not unusual. So that's one thing. Excuse me a second. Okay, so my Harley 82. Why does fueling recommend conventional oil versus synthetic? Also, with the vented dipstick, does the seal on the back of the oil pump make a difference on the function of the vent? Reference M8 on oil and dipstick. You know, the conventional oil versus synthetic oil is it's a bit of a debate. So what I have to do is give you the facts, okay? I can't exactly speak for why fueling would recommend a conventional oil over a synthetic oil. Now, we have to remember there's a bunch of different types of synthetic oils out there, okay? So that would be a question I'd want to ask them specifically, get an answer from one of their engineers. But what I can tell you, the facts, one of the primary differences between and the reason synthetic oil, they say it lasts longer. Synthetic oil still gets dirty just like regular oil. But one of the reasons is that in conventional oil, when multi-grade oils came to be, like, you know, your 20W50, 20W being winter grade, 50 is thick. So the way that this stuff works is when it's a viscosity of, say, a 20 weight, that first number represents how thick the oil is, the viscosity of the oil, at 0 degrees Celsius. The larger number is a representation of how thick the oil would need to be to maintain a particular viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius. Okay, so the way that that works is as the oil gets hotter, obviously the oil has to get thicker. So it has these polymers in it. All right, so the polymers, as it heats up, the polymers expand and open up. And as they open up, that's what thickens the oil and maintains the viscosity through the heat range. So the reason synthetics are so much better than conventional oils is because it's, again, non-petroleum based. So the polymers over time with conventional oil, they get weaker and they don't expand as much. And that's why as your oil gets older, it tends to get thinner when it's warm because the polymers aren't opening up. So with synthetic oils, those polymers last much longer and it maintains its viscosity through its lifespan. So for me, if I were going to change my oil very frequently, say at 2,500 miles or something like that, or probably no more than 3,000 miles, then I would have no problem running conventional. For myself, if I want to do a 5,000 mile oil change, I'm going to run synthetic. So, but I'm curious. I'm probably going to call fueling on that. I would recommend you do the same. So, let's see. Speaking of starters, my stock starter 11 has always seemed weak. Is there a better option? You know, one of the things they did on as the bikes have gotten newer, they removed some of the ground cables. So, since your bike is stock, you know, we have to look at things like, look at your battery, load testing your battery, seeing how old your battery is. That's part of it. But the other, you know, we've done really big engines. Sometimes I've added, say, a ground strap between the engine case and the frame at the starter, just to supplement that a bit. And then it depends on the brand of battery you're buying. So you want to try to look at cold cranking amps. There's several companies out there that make really good batteries. But I'd shoot for 325, 350 plus cold cranking amps on that. Make sure you have good cables on it. Now, Terry Components, I'll say that Keith Terry's been a friend for many, many years. Terry Components makes some fantastic battery cables. So upgrading your battery cables isn't a bad idea either. That helps as well. David Wooten, 98 cubic inch twin cam K&N filter and stock staggered duals without the baffles. Seems to run lean. Need a tuner. Liking 50 miles to gallon though. Wow, Dave. But I got to tell you, man, running a fuel injected bike without baffles, I'm going to recommend watch a video on exhaust dynamics. I did a video a while back. I think the headline on it was "Don't Void My Warranty, Bro," or something like that. Baffles serve two purposes. All right, one of the things that they do, they control what's called reversion, and they also control what's called scavenging. All right, so the purpose of a baffle is, exhaust doesn't move in one direction the entire time. All right, so what happens is you get an exhaust pulse, and then you get fresh air being sucked back into the exhaust, and it works its way back and forth and back and forth. So when you remove that baffle, or you run big pipes, things like that, that reversion has more of an opportunity to get sucked back in and leans the fuel mixture out. Okay. The other thing that does is at Baffles, they promote scavenging, which is the exhaust's ability to actually move all the spent gases from the combustion chamber out of the engine. So your exhaust is constantly in this tug of war back and forth, trying to handle that air, keep it from coming in, and make sure that it goes out. All right. So what happens when you run note without baffles, or you run an extremely large pipe that's way too big for the engine build, then you get an excessive amount of reversion. So people try to tune to that, and it's false lean conditions, basically, sucking that fresh air in. So people try to tune to that. But in order to tune to that, you have to run the engine extremely rich. And it can create inconsistencies, especially on a fuel-injected bike. The other thing, when you're having to pour that much fuel in to compensate for the inconsistent reversion, a lot of times you're washing down the cylinder walls, you're running too rich of a mixture, and you can shorten your engine life. So, man, I would really recommend, if you can, putting those baffles back in and tuning the bike. If you don't want to run the baffles, the bike absolutely has to be tuned. If you're getting 50 miles to a gallon, man, that's on an air-cooled Harley engine, that's a lot. And, I typically tell people, the keys to a healthy tune, somewhere, depending on how you ride, 38 to 42 miles to a gallon. If you ride very conservative, maybe 45. You should have good, clean spark plugs. I did a video on how to read spark plugs as well. And your oil should not smell like fuel. So that's my take on that. Let's see. Sorry, Miss Jimbo. That's all right, buddy. I'm glad you joined us. So let's see. Martin asked, so how big could you go 120 so base gaskets would not leak at 20 to 30,000 miles? That's a 120 is about as far as I really like to go. Nobody has a crystal ball. One of the issues like when you upgrade cylinders, like our cylinders for our 120, which is a 4065 bore, those cylinders, we have them made extremely rigid, and then you have the case that can flex and move. All right, but so we take every precaution we can, and we'll do a 4 5/8 stroke on a 4065 bore, given the 120, and we use an aircraft grade sealant around it that is a non-hardening, so it stays flexible, so it can move around with the case. And then we also use a steel shim as a gasket. Cometic makes those for us, and we use that, apply it on both sides, and then follow a very specific torque sequence. That's really the best way to ensure or get the most out of it before you end up having to reseal the base gaskets. So Bel-Ray is my choice and customers. That's a very popular choice, Ron. It's one of those things that, like we talked about on oils before. If it has the specs and it does what it's supposed to do, that's great. That's why Baskin-Robbins has 31 flavors, right? So that's a good option. Think about vented dipsticks and bypass breathers on air cleaner. Absolutely. Venting the crankcase as best we can is wonderful. Making it a free breather is another issue. So yes, anytime we can vent the crankcases, that's awesome. Ron only used synthetic because synthetic aircraft oil tended to help protect the engine startup. I agree with you, sir. That's absolutely. And I spent 40 years doing airplanes. That's a good synthetic. I'm a thumbs up guy on that. I've tried all oils in 3 different bikes. Always come back to Amsoil after break-in and ran Amsoil on Nissan truck. $500,000 still runs good. I'm with you, Martin. I have. I'm not, as you guys know. I'm not necessarily loyal to a brand. I'm loyal to what works. And out of all my years, thousands of engines, seen the inside of these things, I see a pattern over years. And that includes everything from lawn equipment, things like that too. And I see consistently see good results with AMSOIL, so I've just chosen to stay with it. Let's see. Carrie, I have over 50,000 since Rob. He's referring to Rob Schwartz at Rob's Dyno Service. If you guys missed that video, check that one out. It's the one where we did the, it's a Pro Charger tuning. So anyway, the audio on that one is terrible because we were filming it in the dyno room. But anyway, so 50,000 since Rob installed my cams, S&S premium lifters, R&R cam plate, and zippers tensioners. Should I replace my lifters and stop there? What else to look for? You know, lifters are an interesting thing. It's there's only so many places that make lifters, and I'll leave it at that. If the engine's quiet and you know you've got a pretty good, that's a good lifter too. R&R cam plate is great. The zippers tensioners. I mean, you got a good list of products there, which I'm not surprised at. Rob, you know, would only bolt in good parts. So, you know, and we use S&S lifters along with everybody else's too, just depending on the build. If the bleed down rate is nice and slow and the lifters are staying pumped up and you're not hearing a lot of valve train noise or a lot of harmonics, and you know, I almost say, man, you could run with it. I mean, we have to remember, you know, the lifters in a twin cam and really in an M8 are virtually identical to the lifters that are in a small block Chevy, right? And those lifters can last 150, 200,000 miles. But the cam profiles, a lot of times that are used in Harleys, will beat lifters to death. Where I see most of the problems with lifters isn't necessarily the lifter with mileage. It's not necessarily the lifter, it's the lifter to bore clearance. That's the issue. So, Carrie, I would say, if anything, if you wanted to get in there and just check it out, have Rob measure the lifter bore clearance. All right, and you may find that you need to be half a thou and a half bigger on your lifter to get the proper clearance there. And if he does that, you've only got so many choices about who makes those oversized lifters, and Fueling does make oversized lifters for that purpose. So that would be my suggestion if you went that route. Krieger says, I use Lucas Sand with high flow filters, probably change over to AMSOIL, replace my cam plate cams. Give it a shot, man. I think you'll find that you probably like it, and that's a good filter too. Jimbo, thoughts on running a stock header with no cat? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, I know the EPA is probably not listening. I guess if they are, I really don't care. We pull cats out of stock head pipes quite often. Believe it or not, the Harley stock head pipes actually flow pretty well and work pretty good. So we'll cut them open, remove the cat, weld them back up. You know, using the right muffler's key. Now, on some builds, I will admit, Jimbo, that it doesn't quite work out as well as it could with, say, a true 2-into-1-into-2, because when you cut that cat out, you've got that big chamber that's in the exhaust that's left, and that can create a lot of dead space in there. So some bikes I've seen, this particular builds, that chamber tends to create a little more of that reversion and kind of an unstable exhaust flow. It's a little bizarre, and so that's something to think about, you know. So yeah, you can run it, but if you pull the cat out, you need to tune it. That's an interesting topic. This is something that I'm just going to throw out there. I do see a lot of people taking bikes, leaving the catalytic converter in place, and then tuning the motorcycle. Now let's think about that for a second. The purpose of a catalytic converter, the way that they work, you know, they got platinum in them and stuff. So the way that these things work is when you add fuel to it, they get hot to burn that fuel off. So when you're tuning a motorcycle, what you're doing is you're adding fuel to cool the engine down and give it a little more performance. But if you leave the cat in place, you've now got richer exhaust flow. The temperature of the catalytic converter only goes up, and the resulting thing is a hotter engine. And so think about that. If you're going to leave a cat in place, just do slip-ons. If you're going to remove the cat, the bike's got to be tuned. I would not recommend tuning a bike on top of headers with catalytic converters in them, and I hope that makes sense. Isaac, you're welcome, man. Let's see what we got. Jonathan, glad to have you, man. Later not, it doesn't matter. Glad you're here. HD oil filters are rated to filter 5 microns. Will it damage my stock 107 M8 if I use a K&N or an AMSOIL filter? Which filter? About 20 plus micron. Cheers. Ian, I will give you man, that is a really, really good question. question. So quite a few years ago, I got to know a fella named Zach, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because he's in a little town just outside of Tokyo called Shinjuku in Japan. And Zach is kind of, I'm going to say, I mean, he's a great over in Japan. He's something else, man. He builds some incredible motorcycles. So he asked me to come over and help him with some engineering projects and some development stuff. We worked on some engine combinations. I trained him on some tuning stuff and things like that. And I spent quite a bit of time with Zach. Well, one of the things that Zach and I started talking about was oil filters. So after he and I had our long conversation, I came back here and started testing oil filters myself. And I've got a good friend that works at a major manufacturer. He's an engineer, and they of course have a testing facility. So he agreed to test a bunch of different filters for me. So I basically bought pretty much all the major brands in oil filters. And I typically don't brand bash, but man, Ian South, Oz, you asked the good question, so I'm going to give the good answer. Here's what I found out about the Harley Super Premium 5 oil filters. 5 microns is very small, incredibly small. And when you take those filters apart, that filter media is at a very tight peak, like this. So what we found with testing, I was pulling filters out of bikes that only had, I did them took a 2,000 mile filter, a 2,500, a 3,000, 3,500 mile filter, in all these different brands over the course of a year and tested them. So what I found with the Super Premium 5 was on average at about 3,000 miles, the filter media was clogged in those pleats and the filter was in bypass. What that means is the filter media is too clogged for the oil to pass through it. So the filter bypasses, and now you have unfiltered oil running through the system. So when I learned that, I quit using the Super Premium 5 filters entirely. And again, this is unbiased. It was a test that I had done several years ago, and that's just how we went. So an interesting thing with the K&N filters or the AMSOIL filters. Now it seems when you start getting into that 30 to 40 micron range, the filters that flow a tremendous amount of oil, have a tremendous amount of volume, because of how we have to remember on the, the way these engines work, the oil out of the cam plate goes past the oil pressure sending unit, then it goes to the filter. So what we found on some, not only the the permanent oil filters that you can clean out, the washable ones, and I've had a few people mention with the K&N filters or some of the filters that have the higher micron rating, that 25, 30, that at idle they can get a flickering oil pressure light. Now, Harley engines are primarily volume based, not necessarily pressure based. So seeing a flickering oil light at idle, yeah, that, needless to say, raises some red flags, right? I would be concerned. But if your lifters aren't making noise and the top end's not ticking, you're obviously getting a proper volume of oil. It's just that surge that it seems to get past the filter. So if you ran a K&N, I mean, basically, to answer your question, I found that somewhere between a 20 to a 25 micron filter is perfectly fine, and then nominal rating and that sort of thing. So I'm not a fan of the HD Super Premium 5s. Hope that answers your question, Ian. Ron used comp cams lifters on the last build, running great. Comp cams, man, they have been around forever. Love comp cams. They've done good stuff over the years. Automotive, of course, is where I've used most of their stuff. Dave Pierce, man, I am so glad you asked this question, Dave. S&S are fueling cam plate and oil pump. Awesome question. So I imagine most of you probably saw the video that I did a little while back on the big cam plate debate, for M8 and twin cam, and I talked about the S&S cam plates. And then on the recent, obviously, I did the fueling video on oiling problems with the M8s. The fact is, both of these companies are good companies. All right, both of them put a lot of money into R&D. Each product has its own unique features and benefits, and that's what I try to bring to you guys. Is what's the individual features and benefits, and you have to decide which of those features and benefits are most important to you. So, like for example, the S&S cam plate, it has a bushing on the pinion shaft. Well, that bushing can be serviced; it can be replaced. How many people do you know at motorcycle shops these days actually have the reamer and the proper equipment to replace that bushing? Not very many. We do, but I haven't done one in years. All right, well, that's a bonus on S&S's side. Well, fueling, their position is that the bronze can shed under extreme conditions and contaminate the oil, so they use a process called roller burnishing in that hole, which hardens the aluminum, and so it can maintain its integrity, and it's a very precise fit. S&S uses 3 gear rotors in their pump. They're scavenging from the crankcase and the cam chest at the same time. Fueling uses 2 gear rotors, but they built a more efficient pump. Okay, S&S on their sump in the cam plate and the oil pump, they put screens in it to catch debris. Well, if you look at the screen, and that's fantastic, but then when you look at the screen and the size of the screen, if a piece of particulate would, the holes in the screen, it's possible for particulate to still get past it, and those holes in the screens are just big enough. If a piece of steel got through there that size, it's going to destroy the pump anyway. So it's man, you really just have to compare which features and benefits work best for you. Look at the price of the two and look at their cam profiles, whichever one fits for you, and that's truly the most fair assessment. It's S&S's cam plate is a 60-61 aluminum. Fueling's is a 70-75 aluminum. Do you really need 70-75 aluminum? So it's really just, it's budget. And honestly, if you like blue or red to a large degree, all that said, I jest. It's features and benefits, man, and whichever one means the most to you. So Dave, I hope that helps you out. What do you know about R&R Motors complete engine, buy or not buy? I've worked with R&R stuff for years. I've tuned their bikes. I've messed with their bikes. Tuned one of their 124s. It's good stuff. A lot of the challenge with engine building, I got to tell you guys, making horsepower is easy. All right, it's the longevity. So before you buy an engine, the biggest thing you've got to figure out is how you want the thing to behave. And don't just pay attention to just a dyno sheet. I see so many people chasing a big dyno sheet and then sitting on the side of the road 20,000 miles later wondering why the engine's broke. So you have to think about how you're going to use it. And then you have to think of the quantity or the quality of the parts that are going in it, and then the workmanship to build it. So, Reggie, he's got a great reputation and that. So it's a lot of it is you making sure that you're being sold the engine that's going to fit your purpose. That's the key to that. Isaac's listening while he's riding his bike, thanks to Bluetooth. Awesome. Already tuned with the Power Vision. Very good. Let's see. Also run AMSOIL, my Jeep, my old Heritage KTM, get static oil. European stuff. The European stuff, Ron, you may be talking about Motul. That's a good brand. I'm familiar with them. Ron, smaller micron equals less flow. That's exactly right. It's a trade-off, right? You want more flow, less filtration. It's a trade-off. Is it worth tuning with the HD tuner at all? Only way to keep under warranty. All right, the way that works, Blake, is they had to come out with, and you probably already know this, a lot of you do, they had to come out with a tuning system that would be EPA compliant no matter what adjustment was made to it. So they removed your ability. It's very similar to the Daytona Twin Tech ignitions that I did years ago and designed to get CARB compliant in California. So we have it's the same exact scenario. So on the ignition systems, there's an EPA friendly CARB compliant version, and then there's what we call the race version. All right. So the difference is you're limited into how far you can adjust the ignition tables and what range you can adjust the ignition tables in. So the same exact thing is happening with that street tuner. You're being limited by what you can do. So depending on the modification and how you really want to cool the engine down, air-cooled engines like to see an air-fuel ratio of 14:1, maybe 14:3, depending on your riding style. Now, if you live in an area where you can only get 10% ethanol fuel, the stoichiometric is 14.3 for 10% ethanol fuel. So tuning a 10% ethanol bike at 14.3 is still running a little bit lean. That being said, what the EPA wants to see in a tuner is 14.7 to 1 or really close to it. In a lot of cases, that's too lean depending on the modifications that you make. So, you know, when you're looking at the air-fuel ratios to make the engine healthy, say a 13.8 to 14 at idle, 14.1, 14.3 at cruise, anywhere between 12.8 to 13.4 at wide open throttle, depending on the build. In those ranges, the EPA limits, quite often, it won't allow you to tune in those ranges. So, you know, depending on what you've done, no, you can't do fuel range tuning with a street tuner. That's just the reality of it. So I would recommend going with something else, and I hope that makes sense. What's my feeling about E3 spark plugs running on an 08 custom Softail? Man, I have seen, oh man, the companies that have sent me spark plugs over the years to evaluate. Oh man, I've seen them all over the place. I'm sure you guys remember the old split fire spark plugs that gain you 50 miles to a gallon in your Chevette. I have never seen. Now, again, we're not talking about 11 and under second quarter mile type stuff. We're not talking racing stuff. We're not talking alcohol. We're not talking, you know, any of that crazy stuff or real high boosted stuff. We're talking street engines. All right. I have never really seen a spark plug make any kind of significant difference that would justify the difference in the price. I just haven't seen it, and I've tested them all. There's one particular spark plug, and I thought I had one sitting here on my desk. It's sitting on my other desk that a company sent me, and a very, very strange looking spark plug. Now, I'll admit that one spark plug, I did see a difference. Just by putting it in the bike, no. But it was so efficient that it allowed me to retard the ignition timing by several degrees, like 5 to 7 degrees. And then that helped me pick up, I think it was about 4 or 5 horsepower. It was really impressive. The downside to that spark plug is the thing only lasts about 3,000 miles. So it lasts 3,000 miles and you pay about 20 bucks a piece for it. So, or 15 or 20 bucks a piece. It did what it said it was going to do, and that's awesome. But that's a lot of money to spend, you know, 30, 40 bucks every 3,000 or 4,000 miles for spark plugs. So, man, I stick with the stock plugs. The 6R12 for Harley on twin cams, and then or the Autolite or Champion equivalent. It's healthy for the stock ion sensing system. Stock plug wires work great. Gap them at 40 thou. If you're running just your typical round town hot rod, if you're having heat range issues and you notice center porcelain melting and things like that, you've got a tuning issue. So hope that helps. Let's see, Ron. Let me catch up here, guys. Good grief. Let's see. What's your feeling? E3 spark plugs. What did you find with the reusable filters? They're good. The best one that I ran across was the one that Jag sells. It's right at about a 30 micron filter. Flows well. And occasionally I've only seen on a couple of bikes that thing would flicker. But it's got a magnet on the bottom of it, stainless media. It's a nice filter. Ron Coburn, fueling is the winner. 31 flavors, man. Baskin Robbins has it. Never get 3K on my bike's oil. I don't spend much time in the saddle anymore. Change annually, maybe 1,500, 2,000 miles. That's a good plan. When they store, that's a good thing. Just changing frequently, just from storage. Lately, from Rhino Motorsports, we've seen a few M8s with built engines with crankshaft rod bearing failures. Have you seen any M8 rod bearing failures where the rods become tight and seize up? Yes. Rhino, the problems with the M8 cranks, they're really no different than the problems with the twin cam cranks. And it's scissoring and they're slipping. So that's not an uncommon problem. Matter of fact, I've even seen some that the bike came in running and just had a little bit of a noise, but ran fine. Pull the cylinders off, and you couldn't separate the rods with your hands. It was like completely locked up, which is insane. So yeah, it's not an uncommon thing. And Rhino, there, I would recommend, if you've never done business with them before, call up to Andrew or John at Dark Horse Crankworks. I've been doing business with those guys for 15, almost over 15 years, almost 20 years. Never had a failure from one of the cranks that they built from me. And they're great guys. Just do me a favor and tell them I sent you. And who knows, they may send you a Christmas card or something. Let's see, what else we got? High Filtro Racing Oil Filter. Do you give them a thumbs up? Dave Pierce, I give them a thumbs up. That's a good one. We stock those as well. We keep them here and a couple other brands, but I use them, and they're good stuff. Tim, 114 M8, 447 SE cam, tuned at dealer dyno, chart shows 126 torque, 105 horse. These numbers seem too high. It's hard to say, Tim. Dynos are a real interesting thing, man. Not only can you make numbers seem high, you can make numbers seem low. You can add 10 pounds of air to a rear tire and gain some numbers. You can pull an air cleaner cover off, gain some numbers there. There's so many things that affect a dyno number. And I tell you guys, there's not some secret, company or governing body that goes around and calibrates dynos and makes sure that they're accurate. Does that number seem too high? It's hard to say, man. It really depends on your exhaust. It depends on the tune. I would say the biggest thing is the quality of the tune that you need to look at. So smell your oil. If it smells like gas, it's too rich. Look at your spark plugs. Take a look at my how to read a spark plug video. That'll tell you there. And then just how the bike feels, man. You should be getting, again, somewhere around 38, 42 miles to a gallon, riding conservatively. And if the bike feels good to you, I would just ride it, man, and not worry about the numbers. It's the interesting thing about engines. You build it to the best that you can, using the best parts you can, as efficient as you can. You put years of design and development in, and you tune an engine to where it's healthy. That's the proper way to do it. You tune to where the engine is healthy and it's going to last your customer a long time. I can get 120, 130 horsepower out of a 95-inch motor plus, but it's not going to last very long. You don't drive drag cars to the grocery store on Sunday. So, tuning a healthy engine, you'll forget about the dyno sheet long after you've been riding it for a while. Fred Flint, 16 FLTRU, 15,000 miles, already shimmed compensator, and it's still crap. Looking hard at the man of war. The more I see about cranks, bearings, cam plate, I wonder if this bike's worth spending money on. Yeah, man, these problems were common, but we have to remember too how many of these bikes are sold every year. We see message boards, we see online forums, and we see stuff like that. But what we have to remember is the people that are on the message boards and stuff are a very small percentage of the total market. And typically, what people do, excuse me, have a beverage. So typically what people do when they have a problem, the first place they go is to the internet, right? So you tend to hear about only the problems. Man, I can't answer that. I can't answer that question for you. I can tell you that the price of the bikes have skyrocketed. 15,000 miles on a 16, that's a pretty good bike. It depends on how long you're going to keep it. The prices of the new ones keep going up and up and up. If you've got a bike, you like it, you've already put bars on it, and you're happy with it, man, it's cheap. Getting the bike right and doing it once is cheaper than buying another bike. And you buy a new bike, you're going to be faced with the same problems anyway. You ride it till it blows up, then it gets real expensive. I use Champion plugs, change them every April. Good brand. Still going, see, Martin asked, you still going to make part 2 on the supercharger video at your buddy's shop in Mass? Yes, actually, those bikes, we ran out of time, unfortunately. And I know there's more power in those motorcycles. Rob and I were in the dyno room. I believe it was somewhere around 14 hours that we were in there straight. We were exhausted. We had unbelievable headaches. He's got an incredible fresh air booth there, but even still, man, it was, and we were done. We ended up, we had headaches for like 2 or 3 days and stuff like that. Of course, anyway, I ran out of time. So I know there's more power to be had on those bikes. So I'm going to do a little bit more work to the Pro Charger. I'm going to change a few things on the fuel pressure regulator. And actually, the bikes are going to come to my shop, and I'm going to finish them here. So that's what's happening there. Carrie, just see, supercharger. Okay, Carrie, 2013 Ultra Limited. Should I be concerned about my valve springs now I'm over 100,000 miles? Cam is S&S 551. Do not rev my engine over 4,000. Yeah, your stock valve springs in there, man, are going to be beehive springs. The thing, I personally don't use beehive springs. This will be a debate with cylinder head guys. I don't like beehive springs because if you break one, you're more likely for that valve to drop. Valve drops in the engine just right, running 80 miles an hour down the road. That can be a catastrophic deal. So I run dual coil springs. But anyway, 100,000 miles, man, that's a lot of wear. I would definitely consider going in there, of course, changing valve springs, changing valve stem seals, checking your valve to guide clearance, maybe cleaning up the seats, decarbing stuff a little bit. Yeah, man, I would probably change the springs at 100,000 miles. Isaac, having a hard time loading. I'm coming through clear here, guys, so hopefully it's coming through to everybody. Champion plugs are $2 each, exactly. So Will asks, I'm currently building a 117 twin cam for carbureted 04 Glide. Which ignition system will allow for the most ignition timing tuning? Absolutely, hands down, no question, the TC88A from Daytona Twin Tech. There is no question. That is the ticket. You've got, full custom curve capability. It's got a multi-spark feature, which is great for, and I'm going to say, guys, don't confuse multi-spark with single fire versus dual fire. Those are two totally different things. Twin cams, all twin cams are single fire, but you've got the multi-spark capability built into that as well. And it's an awesome ignition system. If you need some help with that, you can give us a call or hit the website, order one from me. I'll write an ignition map for you that'll be really close. And then I've got some special firmware that I wrote for those ignitions to pretty much prevent any potential kickback issues. With a 117, you might have a little kickback. So let me know about that. Ken Rhodes asked, hey Ken, thanks for popping in, buddy. Ken's one of our members. What all do you recommend for the primary case? I'm assuming you're as far as primary case components. So I'm obviously a big fan of the motor sprocket from Dark Horse. I do like it. Excuse me, quite a bit. Baker makes a pretty good one. I like the features and the simplicity of the Dark Horse one. So I go that route. As far as clutch basket, there's several companies that make some really good clutch baskets out there. Evolution Industries makes a great one. The Trask unit is a great one. Of course, with the Trask one, you have to drill out the rivets on the on your basket and then replace the shell with the billet one. But Evolution Industries and Trask, I like both of those. They're really good pieces. There's a couple other companies out there too that are making them. And when it gets to the point of a component like that, you compare the aluminum. Is it a 6061? Is it a 7075? How's it machined? Is it anodized? Those are the things that really matter. The design has to fit the stock components. So there's not a whole lot of different things you can do there. So it's a lot of it just has to do with what the material is made out of and how easy it is for you to install. Tim, you're welcome, sir. Any thoughts on shotgun shocks? Jonathan, you'll have to tell me what that's about. I'm not familiar with that. Tom Ellis, 19 Road Glide, 114 Stage 1. Want to add Vance Hines X-Pipe cam later on. Will the SC Smart Tune Pro handle these upgrades? Want to maintain factory warranty? Man, I got to tell you, it's an interesting thing here with this whole street tuner thing. All right, so let's say you've modified the bike. You put a pipe in it, you put a cam in it, and then you handle it, and then you tune it with the street tuner. The potential of what could happen is that the engine run too lean. All right, you melt down a piston, you burn up a valve. Because you've put the X-pipe in it and the cam in it, they can say that they will not cover the engine repair because you put aftermarket parts on it and it wasn't tuned properly. But yet you use their tuner. The limitations of their tuner could be the very thing that caused the defect in the engine. So what do, right? Most people are saying just to heck with the warranty and tune the bike, right? Other people are just waiting until the warranty runs out. It's really hard to say, man. If you have, let's see, on a 19, you probably are still working on your factory warranty. A lot of guys are working on their extended warranties. There are a lot of extended warranty companies, and keep in mind, you don't have to buy your extended warranty from Harley. I'm going to save you a lot of money. There are aftermarket extended warranty companies out there that will actually allow motorcycle modifications. Okay, we offer one of those as well. So you can use what tuner you want, you can use what exhaust you want, get an extended warranty, and it will cover those modifications. So that's a little tidbit of information. And a lot of times you can get those warranties a lot cheaper than you you can from your dealer. So let's see, 5x5 here. Oh, hey, Mike Petrosky. Mike's one of our members. Mike's got a pretty sweet V-Rod, I must say. Been a big fan of V-Rods for years. Glad to have you back, Isaac. Let's see, Mark Queen, 03, 88 twin cam, 27,000 miles. Sorry, I thought I read 270,000 miles. I was like, man, I want whatever oil you're using. 27,000 miles, no noise. What about the tensioners? Check, replace, need input. Man, it's cheap insurance. I've seen a lot of that has to do with when the cam chain was made. Some of the early cam chains, when they stamp them, they had a very rough edge around the links of the chain. And then I believe it was 04 was when the change happened, and they got a little bit smoother. Man, I've seen those tensioners last 20,000 miles. We tore a bike down here the other day. This was, I believe it's an 05 Dyno with 50,000 miles on it, and the tensioners were about halfway through. I was astounded to see that. But man, if you don't do it and they break, it can cost you a ton. It can mess up the crank. It can get sucked into the oil pump, shot through the motor. It can cost you a fortune to fix it. So, man, it's almost worth it. Man, it's worth doing just to get in there and see and know. But there's another deal with that. The inner cam bearings were always an issue with twin cam. The stock inner cam bearings were a caged bearing. And anytime you go in there, it's all, man, there were thousands of engines destroyed with those roller bearings coming apart. So it's always a good opportunity when you get in there, if you check your cam chain tensioners, replace those inner cam bearings with Torrington bearings. So the bearing is a full roller and it's held captive by the race itself instead of having a cage in there that's holding the rollers in there. So it's a big upgrade. That's pretty much a standard thing anytime you go into any cam chest. So let's see. Just bought a 17 M8. What percentage of these motors had the fluid transfer problem? Should I be worried? Thanks. Oh, you might want to get you a stiff drink there, bud. I'll tell you, I can't say percentage. I can't really put a percentage on it. I can tell you it must have been a very high percentage based off how the motor company responded to it. So the first thing that they did, they designed a new cam plate, designed a new oil pump. So they obviously saw the need in the beginning to improve that. So again, I can't say exactly what percentages, but there were other issues as well. Things like cylinder spigots breaking and stuff like that. So there was some odd end stuff. So that being said, man, I'm going to tell you, if you start, I have a fluid transfer. Should you be worried? If it happens, it happens. It's one of those things, man. I wouldn't let it haunt you or keep you from riding the bike. Just be aware, yes, it could become an issue at some point, but you know what to look for, right? You know what's causing it. But I will tell you, I've always run this business with our customers. I'm going to say, you know your bike better than I do. And I say that because you spend more time on your bike. And when you come in and you hear a noise or the bike's doing something strange, you're not here because you like my pretty face. Right? You're here because you feel like you have a legitimate issue with the bike. It's doing something different. It feels different. So the responsibility of a shop should be to do whatever they have to do to either remedy or explain the deficiency that you're complaining about. There has to be a cause. All too often people tell me, I went here, and here, and I was told, oh man, that's normal. Oh man, that's normal. Well, it may be normal to other bikes, but it's not normal to your bike. If you didn't hear it a week ago, suddenly you hear it now, that's not normal. So that means something has changed, something is different. So it's my responsibility to dig into that bike and find out what it could be. Now, you might have to pay me to do that. I might have to take, some engine parts apart, whatever, just to go in and check everything. But, it's just kind of part of it. So don't walk away when somebody tells you, oh, that's just normal. If there's a new noise and the noise has changed and something's going on, there's got to be a reason, okay? So either that or just have an explanation, all right? So hope that helps. 2000 Road King is stock from Donald. 2000 Road King is stock. Going to go with spring-loaded primary tensioner and hydraulic cam plate tour and no need for speed. Man, I tell you, Donald, I probably, in a 2000 model, I'm kind of like, yeah, that doesn't sound too bad because, typically your 2000 models, you still had a Timken bearing in the case, which is fantastic. You still had the good square top rods in it. The compensators were good. The clutch baskets were good. I mean, 2000 model bikes were great bikes. My only issue, I'd say, before you put the spring-loaded primary tensioner in there, I would see the difference between the tight spot and the loose spot on the chain, rolling it around completely. If you see a big variance, then you got some kind of run out either in the clutch basket to the hub or something on the main shaft in the transmission, or maybe the sprocket shaft on the crank, maybe the compensator's off a little bit. But if you have a lot of variance like you see with the later model twin cams, and then also with the M8s, then what you're going to do is you're going to stress the main bearing in the transmission and stress the crank bearing, and when it's that spring loading is kind of doing like this. So it would really depend on how much self-adjustment that spring-loaded primary tensioner has. I know there's a company out there, Hayden makes one, and there's Southern Oregon Hot Bikes. They do kind of a hydraulic one. I've used those things for years, and they work great. But just check the overall play in that primary tensioner before you just throw it in there. I think that might be a good idea. And the hydraulic cam plate, yeah, that's a home run, man. Kraus complete front end, triple trees correct degree for trailing. Do you know or use them yourself? I've actually never used those, Martin. As far as is the trail correct? Basically, anytime you do a front end or you're doing big wheels and stuff like that on a bike, the rake is really determined by the desired trail number. That's the bottom line. So you kind of have to worry about fitment of the wheel. And then, of course, the front end travel, you've got rake, trail, all that stuff. So what you want to look at for that, the best thing you can do is look at your specific motorcycle. Harley's website will give this information, and it may even be in your owner's manual. Look at what the trail number is for your motorcycle. All right, then whatever front wheel you're getting and whatever rake it is, find out from the manufacturer from that front end what the resulting trail number would be. The closer that trail number is to the original, the closer that bike will handle to how it handled in its original state. So that's the way to choose front end stuff. Is it correct or not? I don't know, man. Ron Hunter, what is M8 fluid transfer? Basically, they've got oil transferring from the transmission into the primary. This is, guys, I got to chuckle a little bit on this stuff. This stuff isn't new to M8s. This was a problem. That fluid transfer from transmission to primary was actually an issue with twin cams early on. As a matter of fact, when Baker started doing the transmissions, then their fix was to take there's an oil slinger. You've got the clutch push rod that goes through the transmission, and it has a throwout bearing on the end of it. And there's an oil slinger on there. So what I did and what Baker did, we just took the oil slinger off, and that solved the oil transfer problem. The other thing is you could actually, just like they've done with the M8s, is somebody pops up and makes a slightly bigger clutch push rod to help keeping the oil from carrying over. And there was all kind of little gadgets that came out back in the early twin cams. They put there was one company that made a seal that you would put in on one end, and another company made like it wasn't cork, it was almost like a felt, a washer, if you will, that you would take and just slide on the clutch push rod and then shove it down in through there. And so it was all kind of fixes. So what they're doing is they put Harley's fix. I think they did a bulletin on that, was to vent they put a vent on the primary, and that seemed to solve some of that. So Rhino Motorsports 107 twin cam build about to go on the dyno. Just installed a 30 dry shot of nitrous. Any tips on nitrous tuning? Yes. Fuel, man. Fuel. I'm assuming you're probably running a dry. You're running a dry system on that, I guess. Unless you've been innovative enough to put a wet system on it. Your issue may be 30 shots, pretty big shot. Your issue may be fuel delivery and having enough fuel. So I'm curious to know what you're doing for the tuner. So there is a workaround with that to some degree, but it requires two separate maps. So when you've got your wide open throttle, say your 100 kPa stuff, well, let's just say 90 and 100 kPa, depending on what map you're using and what you're tuning it with. So you can hit 100 kPa at 2,000, 3,000 RPM and only be at 20 to 30% throttle. So don't think that 100 kPa means wide open throttle. That's not the case. You can experience full load of the system. So one of the workarounds, if you're tuning nitrous, is just to tune that 100 kPa column extremely rich to make sure you're going to have enough fuel for the 30, which is going to be pretty close. You don't know if you're going to have enough fuel there. The other thing is to oversize the injectors. The problem with doing it that way is that you've got too much fuel when you're in those heavy load conditions and you're not spraying the nitrous. So what I've done for people in that scenario is you could either run a secondary injector, you could run a wet system. It kind of gets complicated doing it that way. The other way you could do it is if somebody had, say, like a Power Vision or something that they've got 2 maps they can carry around, tune the bike twice. Tune one for normal operating max load type stuff without the nitrous, and then another map that's going to leave everything the same in your tuning range and your roll-on range or your cruising range, but your 100 kPa, 90 and 100, richen those up to have enough fuel for your nitrous. So then just tell your customer, if you're going to blow nitrous, you need to use this nitrous map. That way he'd be suitable for both scenarios. And if you're using like a Power Vision, then you can, he can switch those maps on the side of the road if he wanted to. So that's my best advice on that. Is the 02 Glide model year also a good year? I always wondered, discounting tensioner use. I go back and forth with either fixing or keeping or buying new. Great bike overall. Man, I got to tell you, 02 was a great year. 02, that you still had Timken bearing in the case. You still had square top rods. The compensators were great. The 5-speed transmissions were great. 02 is a fantastic year. It really is. They were, if yours is injected, you had Delphi injection on it. Yeah, they were rock solid years. No issues with those. I would, if I ran across an 02 Glide. Matter of fact, I kicked myself in the butt for selling my 06. 06 was another great year too. Right to Record. Read any good books lately? I'm going to touch on this one. Let's see if I have that book here. Okay. Yes, I have it. Give me just a second. All right. If you guys like to read sci-fi, thriller, love story type stuff right here, and I'm not much of a reader. I'll read tech manuals. I'll read, engineering books and stuff like that, but reading for pleasure is not something I would normally do. This book right here, it's a big, thick one. Arc Atlantis. If you want to read a good book, that is an awesome book. And Right to Record right there is the author of that book. I've known that fella for 30 years. He is an incredibly gifted author. And he's got a couple other books that he's working on too. If y'all are interested in the book, leave me a comment and I'll shoot you a message on that. So thanks for joining us, my friend. Hope this isn't too personal. I was just curious about your eye injury. Blake, I don't mind you asking at all, sir. Matter of fact, I would prefer you ask than wonder. So I was actually shot in the eye. So I was, let's see, how old was I? I was about 12 or 13 years old. Next door neighbor was playing with and I'm actually really kind of lucky to be here. The next door neighbor was playing with a 22 pistol. He was, I think it was about 30 or 40 feet away from me. And he took aim and said, "I'm going to shoot you." And I said, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And he pulled the trigger. So basically what happened is it went all the way through, embedded in right against my brain tissue, tore the optic nerve, tore the retina and all that type of stuff. But there was a doctor that left it up to me. And my choices were to give me a glass eye. And let's remember how long ago this was. So it was, I can either give you a glass eye, but nobody had ever tried to sew an eye back together at that point because it was in pieces. So he said that, I can try to sew it back together and it'll probably look like hamburger meat. I said, I don't know, but at the same time, technology is changing, right? So he said, who knows, 20, 30 years, they could have electronic, artificial retinas or something to restore your vision. So I trusted him and he sewed it back together. So what you see, the reason it's all black is, of course, you can't sew a lens back together. So it's a little tough sometimes in the machine shop because it stays dilated all the time and it's still light sensitive. So what it looks like is like looking through a bottom of a milk jug or looking through a piece of wax paper. And you know, so from about half my eye over is completely black, and over here I can kind of see movement and stuff. I still run into walls. I can't bowl anymore. But I can shoot a rifle pretty good. It's another thing. Come to appreciate it though. So you know when you typically line stuff up on the walls, right? You line up pictures on the walls, and the first thing you do is you close one eye to look at it and see if it's level. Well, I can, you know, my wife hang a picture on the wall. I can go, yep, it's straight, or tell her to move it. So that's the story with my eye, man. Thanks a lot for asking. Let's see. I'm new to twin cams. I ran shovels and pans all my life since the mid '70s. So M8 is Greek to me. Thanks. You know, it's a M8 is a vastly different engine. It's very, very similar to twin cam, but the things that really change are anytime you go from 2-valve to 4-valve, it's a drastically different deal. Cam profiles are different, effective duration numbers, all this other stuff, flow number, everything changes on a 4-valve. 4-valve engines like compression, they like cylinder pressure, and they like very small exhaust, you know, it's suitable for engine relative to kind of like what twin cam was. So, you know, it's, yeah, M8s are a vastly different engine. Now, and I will tell you an interesting thing with that. I was actually involved with 4-valve for twin cam many years ago. Jim Fueling, I think this was in probably the I want to say it was in the early 80s, early mid 80s, somewhere around there. He started working on a 4-valve head, and then he made a 4-valve head for Evo, made a ton of power, but it didn't really take off too well because they were ridiculously expensive. Well, then a few years went by, twin cam came out, and I was actually pulled in to help redesign a 4-valve head for twin cam, and I'll have to put up some pictures of this or something. So ended up actually building some 4-valve twin cams, and I wanted to introduce them to market, but the problem was the price. I mean, they were going to be, well, now it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but in 2002, 2003, to pay $2,500 for, you know, a set of heads was insane. But these engines were making 160, 170 plus horsepower, normally aspirated, getting 45 miles to a gallon, and they made a ton of power. They were just awesome. But they were too expensive, and we just couldn't do it. There's some cores left around, and actually I know where there's a pallet full of those cores, kind of under top secret. I thought about reviving them and bringing them back out, putting 4-valves on twin cams. It's just you know, people willing to pay for it, I guess, was the big thing. Let's see. Ashley, Kevin, you wizard. Thanks for your insight, sharing your knowledge. Thank you for sharing your charity and a couple of shirts. I'm in for a couple of shirts, and I would like a mug as well. Man, I appreciate that, guys. I know we like talking about motorcycle stuff, and I love motorcycle stuff too. But you know, it's but I love my family, and I love helping people too. I love making friends. And you know, and then just doing that charity is just kind of my way of giving back. So I appreciate the fact that you guys think it's cool. So thanks for that. Fueling makes good cam chain. Yes, they do. All right, Ronnie asks, thanks, Kevin. Nitrous bike was tuned all motor with the power vision. We are utilizing a watt switch from Nitrous Express to activate it, nitrous solenoid and switch, and a map PC5 to do a nitrous map. Awesome, man. You got it. Rock on. It's all about the fuel delivery, bro. When you hit the button, you know, what the final AFR is and keep her healthy. Wow, I want one 4-valves for twin cam. You know, we could, again, guys, I could revive it. One of my issues is I'd have to remake all the rocker arms. I need rocker arm shafts. Valves, I'd have to make a big batch of valves, valve springs, things like that. Because all that stuff was very, very proprietary at the time. So it's definitely something that could be, you know, that could be done. Something to think about. Ron, have a good one, man. An hour late. Thanks. Be safe. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna flip through here for a second and see if we've got any more questions. What time is it? Oh man, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. Y'all, I'm surprised you guys are still hanging out and not sick and tired of seeing my ugly face. See if we got any other questions. I think we pretty much answered them all. I'm going to give you guys a couple more minutes to see if there's any more questions. And You, guys, again, I can't thank you enough, man. The channel, your support, the comments. I love getting your comments and reading about your experiences. I've learned a lot from you guys, which is great. We're going to be firing up. If you remember the 300 straight 6 for the GMC, we're going to be working on that. And if you remember Stiffy the Bobber, the panhead bobber, I've been doing a bunch of work to it, and so I've been kind of hiding that one a little bit. I've still got to get it painted. And my good buddy Gurr from Ireland, Gurr Chopper. Gurr is an incredibly gifted painter, and he is, oh man, I can't believe it. He has offered to paint that motorcycle for me, and I can't believe it. So I'm going to be shipping the motorcycle to Ireland, well, the tins and the frame, and then he's going to paint the bike for me and send it back. So I cannot wait to show you guys Stiffy the Bobber once we get that thing done. And then we've got a lot of stuff else going on. You know, I've still got the FXR that I'm working on, the monster FXR that I called FXR 71 in honor of Kelly and the guys at Lockheed with the SR 71 Blackbird there. So FXR 71 on that. And then of course I'm still working on the Norton Featherbed Wideline Manx. That just so happens to have a Victory Octane engine in it and an inverted front end, so that's going to be a good one. Let's see. Let's spend time. Much love. Thanks again, brother. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. New 64mm SE polished intake. Actually, Ashley made a comment, and I want to comment on that. He said, I didn't know that I was a vet. I'm actually not a vet. Unfortunately, this right here is what kept me from going in. So, quick story on that. When I was in my senior year of high school, they brought in a junior ROTC unit. I joined that ROTC unit, took the ASVAB test, which is the mental aptitude test and the academic test for entrance into the military. And actually, that year, 1994, placed first in that. So, according to the ASVAB and the U.S. military, I was the only guy that got a perfect score on that ASVAB test. So, I basically had an appointment to anywhere I wanted to go in the military. The plan was, from what I understood, is me go to Annapolis. I was only going to be there for a couple of years, come out as an officer, and they were going to ship me to the Pentagon for military intelligence. Right until the point that they found out about my eye. So it was kind of a funny thing. So I even went through the interview process, went through the tour, went through everything. And then they find out that I'm blind in one eye. So there's this lieutenant colonel that's interviewing me, and of course he's furious. He's pounding on his desk, he's so angry. Great loss to the military and all this other kind of stuff. So then he paused and he caught his breath and he leaned in real close and he said, so tell me, Kevin, how did you get this far? And I said, what do you mean, sir? And he says, well, how did you pass the eye test? And I said, sir, it's my understanding the requirement to join the U.S. military is 2040. The 2040 line of the Snellen eye chart is PECFD. And he realized right there the way I got through was memorizing the Snellen eye chart. Imagine that. So I would have loved to have been a vet. I would have loved to have served my country, but unfortunately, they wouldn't let me. My dad, USMC though. My father-in-law was in Army, an engineering battalion in Vietnam. He was a welder. My father spent his tour, and also he was Marine. He also spent his time in Okinawa in the motor pool. And then when he came out, he went Air Force Reserves. So I'm a patriot. If you guys remember the pictures from the shop, the two flags, those are the first thing hung in garage and shop of anywhere I've ever been. So it means a great deal with me. Jonathan, thanks, bud. Appreciate you coming in. J Custom Cab, 14 limited, 86,000 miles, never been into. Starting to get some valve noise. What would you recommend doing? What would you recommend doing as a rebuild, cam plate, lifters, valve springs, etc.? Thanks. 86,000 miles, man. I tell you, the first thing that I would do would be to, before you tear anything apart, do a leak down and a cylinder pressure test. That is going to tell you how healthy that motor is. Valve noise, not really unusual, but the leak down and cylinder pressure test is going to tell you the health of it. It may not necessarily tell you the fatigue condition of the components. So if you're not burning oil, that sort of thing, man, I'd almost say just ride it, right? So much of it depends on your budget and how long you want to keep the motorcycle. I have a hard time pulling anything apart that's running well. I just, if it's running good and it checks out, man, I'd almost say just run it, But if it's not burning oil, I wouldn't sweat it. Of course, at 86,000, if it's in your budget, yeah, not a bad idea. At least just a basic rebuild. But again, man, that's all about your budget. I've seen well maintained. I've seen some Harley engines last 130, 140,000 miles. Now, they don't make very much power, and they were slap wore out, but they work. David Wooten, thoughts on '07 Dyna Goodyear issues. All right, guys, since we're running on about 5 minutes to go, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to answer David's question here. If you guys have any more questions, pop them up there real quick for me, and then I'm going to sign off about 6:30. I haven't eaten today, and my wife's sitting at home waiting on me. So, David, thoughts on an '07 Dyna Goodyear issues? Man, I hate to tell you, unfortunately, '07 was a tough year for Harley Davidson. There were some good things that they had. They still had, you still had your... you had a Delphi fuel injection system, '07 Dyna. You would have had a one-piece throttle body. You would have had 3.91 injectors in it. You would have had the good throttle position sensor, the good IAC motor. You would have had all of that type of stuff. And, man, the problems with the '07s were the integrated compensating sprockets. That was a big problem. Cranks were a huge problem on the '07 Dynas. No, they were a problem in '07 for all the bikes. What comes to mind is those were the primary issues, but those led to other things too. Like you had in the primary, you had the automatic primary chain tensioner tightening up too tight, those messing up roller bearings in the transmission, the main drive gear bearings. So they definitely had their issues, unfortunately, man. And it was a crapshoot. You can pull a cam cover, you can check crank run out on both before it gets too bad, see if maybe it's an issue. You're okay at 5 or 6 thou. It's not ideal, but 3 thou or less is better. 0 is best, but that's virtually impossible. Krieger, you're welcome, bud. All right, guys, well, it is 6:25, and is my bike done yet? It's almost done, man. It'll probably be done tomorrow about 3 o'clock. Guys, thanks a million for tuning in. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed answering your questions. Hope you guys enjoyed yourselves as well. It is 6:30. It is beverage time. It is dinner time. Again, fellas, I cannot thank you enough for supporting the channel, sharing this with your friends, and getting the word out for all this stuff, and just getting information to good people who want good running motorcycles. And facts. Facts are a wonderful thing. So, all right, guys, share it with your friends. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. You know the drill. And, fellas, I appreciate y'all very, very much. Take care of yourselves and each other.